Hey YouTube, thanks again for checking out the Film Geek. Today I'm counting down my top 10 favorite movies about the film industry. Number 10, Tropic Thunder. Tropic Thunder, of course, is the story of a group of actors that go out to film a movie but end up falling into a war instead. I mean, come on, we all know this movie. It has some of the most quotable comedy lines of the last 20 years. Number 9, Boogie Nights. Ah, yes, Dirk Diggler. I told you it's about making movies. I didn't say what kind of movies, right? These are films that are released in theaters. Boogie Nights, the story of one kid's journey from being a nobody dishwasher into being a porn star extraordinaire. It's a dream that only those special few get to fulfill in the pornography business. Yeah, if you haven't seen Boogie Nights, you're missing out a lot. It's a good film. It really is. It's strange to watch a heartwarming film about the pornography business. So, if you haven't seen it yet, check it out. That is 1997's Boogie Nights. Number 8, 2011's HUGO. The story of the early days of film, the 1920s and the silent film era. This movie is nothing more than just a love letter of that time period. This movie is directed by Martin Scorsese, which is kind of odd. This is a very lighthearted, fun, family-ish film. So it's surprising that somebody like Martin Scorsese is directing it, but it is a beautifully done film. It's a lot of fun, and it really captures the importance of the early days of film. Number 7 is a really fun movie. Number 7 is Be Kind, Rewind. This, of course, is with Jack Black and Mos Def. This movie is great. The reason I love this movie is it really reminds me of when I was a kid. I'm not because I knew a guy that erased all the videos in a video store. No. It reminds me of being a kid because it's a video store. It was such a culture. It grew up outside of Kansas City, Missouri, in a small town. And we didn't have a Blockbuster growing up. We had like a little mom and pa little video store that you would go to. And that's what really this movie really captured for me. It was that little mom and pa video store. And that's why I love this movie so much. Number 6, we're diving into the bag of Robert Altman here with The Player. 1992's The Player is the story of a movie producer who believes that a man who's a scriptwriter is threatening to kill him. He then mistakenly kills the wrong man himself and then spends the rest of the movie trying to hide from police. This film is great. Like I said, this is a very well-directed film. It's Robert Altman. Those of you who are not familiar with Robert Altman, why? Okay. But anyways, he directed MASH. So, if you like MASH, you haven't seen The Player, check out The Player. Number 5. Oh boy, number 5. Now this movie, when I first saw it, I really didn't like it too much. Sorry, it took a couple views. It took me a second time before when I really realized what this movie is about. And that is Barton Fink. Oh, this is the Coen Brothers. This is an early Coen Brothers film. Came out in 1991. The story of a movie writer trying to write this script and just all the hoops and drama that he has to deal with when navigating Hollywood in, I believe it's 1930s, 1940s. I know it's the golden age of cinema. I do know that much. It's a Coen Brothers film, so if you enjoy the Coen Brothers, I highly recommend this movie if you haven't seen it. Number 4 in the films about films is a really interesting movie. This one, actually, I didn't even know existed until last year. A friend of mine suggested this movie to me, and that is Brutal Massacre. 2007's Brutal Massacre is the story of it's a mockumentary, I suppose you'd say. It is about the making of a low-budget horror movie. And the reason why I love this movie so much, I have dove into film and starting to do some research and read a little bit about these films and these underground hits or these cult films, and you really learn the passion that these directors had and these actors. They didn't know they were making schlock. These guys thought they were making great cinema, and you know, that's what I love about the cult film. So this movie is just an absolute love letter to those low-budget horror movies that you found in the 80s, the 90s, even today. Your typical slasher film, teenagers getting killed, so on and so forth. So if you are a fan of slasher films and you have not seen Brutal Massacre, I highly recommend it. Number 3. Now, getting back into the B-movie genre again. This movie is one of my favorite movies of all time, and that is Ed Wood. A movie directed by Tim Burton starring Johnny Depp. Johnny Depp stars as Ed Wood, the notoriously worst director in Hollywood history. That's debatable at this point. However, at the time, Ed Wood was the worst director Hollywood had ever seen. If you have not seen Ed Wood, or you're a cult film fan, and you don't know the name Ed Wood, you need to hit Google and find out who this guy is. The movie Ed Wood is it's a biopic about 3 of his films, the making of Glenn and Glenda, Plan 9 from Outer Space, and Bride of the Monster. These 3 movies are cult gems, and they're all from the same guy. The reason why I love those 3 movies, or even just anything by Ed Wood, was every time he went out there, he thought he was just making the best dang thing he ever could, and boy, bless his heart, he sure wasn't. Hey, bit of advice, guys. Make sure you charge your cameras before you start filming a video. Depp delivers the finest performance of his entire career in this movie. That is my opinion, though. I mean, whatever. I'm just some guy from the Midwest. But if you like the B-movie genre, you don't know much about Ed Wood, this movie really captures the history of Ed Wood, and it really does a good job of telling his story. So the number 2 best movie about making movies or the film industry is Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. It is a great movie. It's Tarantino, but this is a so much more light-hearted Tarantino than we really get to see a lot of the time. I'm not saying this movie's a comedy. I think it falls into that dramedy category, but it really is a good movie. Just both the leads, both Brad Pitt and Leonardo DiCaprio are just fantastic in this movie. Brad Pitt plays a stuntman who's almost past his prime, and the same way with Leo, he's playing an aging actor who was once a movie star, and now he's kind of fallen into TV obscurity. Number 1 is a movie that might surprise a lot of you, because I think a lot of you don't even know this movie exists, and that's not necessarily any fault of your own. And that is 1941's Sullivan's Travels. Oh, Sullivan's Travels is one of the greatest movies ever made. I will do a full-on review on this film someday. I'm about ready to start doing a Chris's Classics, where I'm going to go over a lot of movies that are at least 40 years old. See, this movie is actually the first dark comedy. You laugh at misfortune in this film. You laugh at people being in a chain gang in this film. And this movie came out in 1941. It tackles some really unusually controversial subjects of the time for film. This movie is just an absolute classic. It's the story of Sullivan, and he wants to make the film Oh Brother, Where Art Thou? I wonder what movie that influenced. Brother, Where Art Thou was supposed to be a story of the common man, the salt of the earth, the vagabond, the tramp that traveled from town to town inside of boxcars all along the way, carrying his little knapsack over his back. Well, Sullivan, of course, living a life of privilege, had no idea what it was really like to be that kind of person. He really wanted to make the movie Oh Brother, Where Art Thou? So to prove to everybody that he could make a film that's serious and tackle the subject matter in the proper form, he decides to go out there, kind of prince and pauper it, and be a hobo. Travel the rails and find out what's going on with the common man. This movie needs to be seen. 1941's Sullivan's Travels. Believe me, even if you don't like the old black and white films, you're going to love this movie. These jokes are still relevant today. The acting is great. The situations that they get into are relevant to people. This movie, it just is gold. People give me crap a lot because I don't like the movie Citizen Kane. Yes, that film is an absolute classic. But if you want to see why I don't like Citizen Kane as much as the next person, then check out Sullivan's Travels and tell me to my face that Citizen Kane is a better movie, and it deserves its place as the best film ever made. Another Film Geek video. Thanks again for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you learned a little bit about these movies. 10 films about the filmmaking business, or just movies in general. These are all films that I highly recommend, so check them out. And don't forget, keep watching movies, folks, because you know I'm gonna.